This week, we're going to be talking about the 2014 Spiel des Jahres award nominees, plus a brand new block of cards for Magic the Gathering, and lots of news out of ACD's Game Day.
And our topic of the week, competitive versus cooperative in board games. Will teamwork bring you to victory, or is it going to be every man for himself? All that and more. I'm Will Keeler.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and this is the Roll for Crit podcast. All right, welcome to episode number 3 of the Roll for Crit podcast. Lots of awesome and exciting news today, so we're going to get started. First up, they officially revealed this week the nominees for the Spiel des Jahres awards for this year. If you're not familiar, these are the prestigious awards that come out of Germany every year, specifically for board games that are published in Germany, or at least maybe they didn't. Usually they originate in Germany, but they at least have to have some publisher bringing them out in that country. So a lot of these games you may not have even heard of or had a chance to play yet. The big 3 that got nominated this year were Camel Up, Splendor, and Concept, which neither of us have played.
No, we have not.
But I can tell you a little bit about them. They actually sound pretty cool. Camel Up is a racing game in which you race camels. And you actually bet on which camel you think is going to win. Very exciting stuff.
So it's a horse race.
Only with camels.
I can dig it.
Then you've got Splendor, which takes place in the Renaissance period. It's about getting the most money of all the other players. And Concept, which is a very different, sort of sounded like almost like team-based charades mixed with password, where you're trying to make the other team guess a certain word or a term of some kind, which sounded pretty interesting. All of them sound cool. I'm sure we'll see some of them over here if they're not already. Then they also have a list of recommended games that sort of like the honorary mentions. Mm-hmm. One of which was Love Letter, which is a Japanese game, but that's the one that we both love.
Yeah, we recommend that you guys play it if you can. It's great. It's a nice, small, quick game. It's not complicated at all.
Definitely,
and it's cheap, so it's easy to pick up.
So definitely recommend it, and if you find these other games, but it's cool. It's cool that there is this awards for board games, whereas movies have the Oscars. Video games don't really have anything yet. It's kind of nice that board games do have something people can rally around and get excited about. I would love to see in the future more varied. Some sites do their own awards, but I always think it's nice to have that kind of prestigious official kind of thing like the Oscars is for movies. And it would be fun to see, because also they nominate 3 games and they give 1 award. It's not like there's a variety of best co-op game or etc. like that, which would be cool to.
Well, I mean, if we're taking the fact of how conventions are growing so much and how nerddom isn't nearly as a niche thing anymore, I would not be surprised if everything's going to grow. I mean, not just board games, but video games as well. And we're going to see them more as an art form, and they're going to get the credit they deserve.
I hope so. It would be cool. But anyway, you can check all those awards out in those games on the site and tell us who you want to win, maybe.
Ooh, I'd like to see.
What do you got for us, Will?
Well, so those who follow Magic know that the new set Conspiracy is coming out this June. However, they just announced the next big block called Khans of Takar. Now, the first set is also called that. We're actually visiting the plane of Sarkhanval. For those who don't play Magic, the worlds are called planes. There's different planes. They're like alternate universes. And there's people who can go to each one, called planeswalkers. Sarkhanval is one we discovered on a different plane before, but he wasn't from that plane. This is his home world. Now, supposedly, all the dragons died out on this world. And from what we can tell from the artwork, it seems to have somewhat of a Chinese, maybe Mongolian theme. I guess the name also gives that away too. But we've also been told that they're going to introduce something that a lot of people have really wanted that they had in the past, and something that they've wanted to do, but they haven't done in a Magic set before. Now, a lot of people are hoping for something called Riggers. This came from their Future Sight set when they pretty much gave one card a mechanic. So each card had a different mechanic. And there's a card called Steam Flogger Boss. This card had something called construction, like not constructions, contraptions and riggers. And everyone was wondering, like, where are the other cards that have riggers on it?
And this is R-I-G-G-E-R, right?
Yes, correct.
Rigger.
Yeah, so it's sort of like this new creature type, but nothing else had it. So every time a new set comes out, everyone's been hoping for it. So now everyone's dying for this. I actually do not think this is going to happen because, well,
suckers.
I'm sorry, but the way the artwork looked, like I said, it had like a Chinese theme, or Mongolian. So what I think they're going to do is actually bring back some of the abilities from the old Legend of the Three Kingdoms set. Now, this is a set that was based on the Chinese Three Kingdoms. Great story. But they only really released it in China and Japan because it was supposed to be more of try to bring in players there. And there's a little bit in Australia. So these cards are really expensive, most of them. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going to bring back some of those abilities and like influence from there. And I think that's going to be really awesome. Either way, whatever they do, I'm excited for it.
Well, as a person who didn't understand a single word you just said, I'm just curious, what are your feelings about the most recent Magic set or the last two? Isn't there anything you're hoping that they change or improve on in this one?
Well, in the last few sets, they've been doing a really great job of mixing in story with card mechanics, not being too confusing. A while back, they did a block called Kamigawa, and it was a Japanese-inspired set, which I thought was a little cool, but they did a really bad job in tying the mechanics and story together. No one understood it because no one really got all the stories. They went too deep into the Japanese mythos that a lot of people didn't understand. But their last set was Greek-based, and instead of going into super deep, like odd Greekness,
Born of the Gods, right?
Born of the Gods, that's correct. They kept it more in like people could understand. Like even though Krakens, for example, aren't Greek, they had Kraken cards in there because everyone knows, release the Kraken.
What
from
are
the movies.
Krakens?
They're like giant sort of sea monsters.
I mean, where do they originate?
Norse, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, but like they understand that they need to make sure that players can get the mythos. Like they had maybe one or two cards of not as well known myths. Mm-hmm. Sort of like a nice little treat to those who get it. But a lot of the things are there, like you can understand and get your head around.
No, that sounds pretty.
So
cool.
I think that's why I'm excited what they do with this set. So they've definitely they've upped their game, I feel.
Now, I have some exciting surprise bonus news.
Related.
That's right. Bonus news! We're going to have flashing lights and zoom the camera.
Is this a game show now?
Bonus news! Ivan's shaking his head no, but don't worry about him. This is hot off the presses, folks. They just announced they're going to be making Magic the Gathering action figures.
Ooh.
Based off the Planeswalkers themselves.
They are sort of like the big honchos, they're the ones everyone talks about. Also, they're the cards that somehow skyrocket to $100.
So yeah, I mean, I was surprised they had never done that before. So that's something you'd buy? I think that sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like if you know Magic, there's the 5 colors. Planeswalkers relate to them. So it's sort of like someone you get behind, I guess. So like you could be like, I got Jace because he's the blue guy and I like that, or whatever your color may be. So and plus, they already sell Magic cards. People, of course, are going to buy them.
I mean, I think it would be cool, not from having played too much Magic, but just loving the artwork on the cards to have some of the creatures they have. Just as
no, I mean that's definitely one of the reasons I got into Magic so much. I just love the artwork on some of the cards. They truly have some great artists there. But
that's that.
We have some related news, though.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Speaking of Wizards of the Coast, who make Magic the Gathering, if you heard our story last week, they recently got into a lawsuit with the company Cryptozoic over their game Hex, Shards of Fate, claiming that it was a copyright infringement on their Magic game. Well, Hex actually officially responded, or at least one of the guys did. Corey, can't remember his last name, something or other, from the Hex team, he put out this statement on their website responding to them. And basically, you can find it on our site, but basically summed up, something along the lines of, these are bullies and we're going to fight back and they don't have a right to do this, and don't worry, fans of Hex, nothing's going to happen to your game and we're going to work hard to keep it that way. Which I thought, hey, respect to them for putting a statement out like that. They said, feel free to ask us any questions. Obviously, we can't elaborate on too much stuff because there's a lot of legal red tape there and they can't really say certain things. They're not allowed to. But the fact that they're willing to stick up for themselves, I think, is kind of cool. And I can see, although Cryptozoic is big, Wizards of the Coast is arguably much bigger. So I do, you can see how they kind of might feel like the little guys being kicked around a little.
Well, I think in this opinion, the reason they're saying that is as much as that they feel the little guys, but they're getting the public opinion on their side.
Well, sure.
I mean, there's an article we posted in our news thing. We'll put a little link in the description. But from a lawyer who did a great job breaking it down and making it a lot easier to understand. Like, there's a lot to this. It's more than just one thing. There's like copyright and like other ways, and they might win some things, might not win some other ones.
Right.
And there is no good and evil in this. Like, there is one example of a card. There's a magic card called Form of the Dragon, in which you can only be attacked by creatures with flying, and you can deal like 5 damage a turn. And then there's a card like Form of the Tsar, or like Curse of the Tsar, or Rage of the Tsar, and Hex. And it's, you are now a dragon, you can only be attacked with creatures of flying, and do something to deal 3 damage to a creature with flying. So it's almost identical. I mean, there are some fair cards in there. But we'll keep an eye on it and see how things go.
Yeah, I'm still rooting for them just because I like an underdog.
I mean, I want them to be split. Like, I think.
Why can't we all just get along?
I don't want the game to disappear because always diversity is always a plus. But if there are more cards that are literally just like that just seem like a rehashing, they really need to get rid of those.
You could be right. I really don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, no. The thing is, we do not have all details.
It's true.
But
it's true.
Let's hope for a happy conclusion for the gamers.
Yeah, we might be talking about this for a while because usually these things are dragged out.
It could be sold really fast. It could be dragged out. We do not know.
So stay tuned.
But take the look at the link in the comments because that will help you. It'll hash out the legal stuff we cannot explain because neither of us went to law school.
Not yet. Ivan did, but he's not here. So. Let's move aside from legalities. What else you got?
I got actually a much cooler, brighter note. They're releasing a new Cosmic Encounter expansion, which is a game we both highly approve of getting. Really fun. It's called Cosmic Dominion. It's actually based off fan suggestions and ideas. Now, this comes with a lot of stuff. 30 new aliens you can choose from, different variants and tokens. Now, we've actually seen 4 of the aliens, which I'm going to explain right now. He hasn't yet, so
this is one of my favorite games ever. So I'm excited to hear about what these new alien powers are going to be like.
And I definitely put it up there near my top 10, or at least in it or near. But okay, so the 4 aliens I have for you, baby. I'm going to say the names. Is the Bride, the Aristocrat, the Explorer, and the Pirate.
Oh, and also there's the Tourists. I just remember that one too.
Oh, and the Tourists, yes. I did tell you the name of that one, but I didn't tell you what they do.
I don't know what they do.
All right. The Bride has each alien species has a power. And then I'll explain what the power is.
If you're not familiar with the game, each person has a different alien, and sometimes their powers can radically change how the game plays.
Now, the Bride's ability is to marry. Once I believe it's during alliances, you can decide to marry your opponent. Okay. When you marry them, you take one of their ships and you put it on your little card. Now, whenever battles begin, you can choose to alliance with them without them asking. So you literally force yourself into an alliance with them. And you can show each other your cards and then give a card to them, 1 card a turn. But, now let's say you don't like them. You can divorce them.
Which is often the case.
You can divorce them. You turn the card around.
Can you sue them for alimony?
Actually, no, you automatically get alimony. You get half their hand.
Now, what is the downside to this?
You cannot marry them again. So you don't want to just marry done. But yes, I think that sounds hilarious.
Oh yeah.
And not to mention the artwork on these cards are fantastic.
Yeah, definitely check them out.
Now, the next one I'll talk about is the one you said, the Tourists. They have the power to go sightseeing.
Great power.
They get a special token. It's a cruise, a space cruise ship. And if it's near one of their home planets, they can put ships on it. And during the Destiny phases was when you find out who's dealing with who. If nothing bad happens, you can move it to the left or right. Then you can drop people off on planets. Or
drop your own ships off?
They just go onto the enemy planet like, ooh, this is nice. But if you choose not to, you can send a postcard home, which is pretty much sending one of your ships on the cruise ships back to your home planet.
So you can basically just get a colony that way.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's what it seems to be. Next one I'll talk about is the pirates. They have the power to raid. Now, if they're on the offensive or an ally of the offense, so pretty much on the offensive side, instead of putting colonies there, they can take enemy ships if they win. With those enemy ships, they can turn them in anytime, I think at the end of, I forget the name of which phase, but they can turn them in for rewards. So pretty much, or they can barter with the enemy player to get their ships back for stuff.
So they pillage and plunder.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
It is really cool. The next is the aristocrat. Now, this guy is really annoying. Before the game starts, after you find the flares, you shuffle the deck, he searches through the deck and makes his hand.
So he gets to custom make his own hand.
With the exception of the aristocrat flare. He cannot take that.
Okay.
The flares are like special cards of the alien abilities, and if you get your own...
But he can take anyone else's.
Yes.
He could take a handful of them if he really wanted to. Although that would probably be kind of stupid, but go on.
Then, once a turn, he can take a flare from outside the game and put it in his hand. Now, if he has, I can't remember if it's I believe it's 2 flares of aliens that aren't in the game, he has to take one and remove from the game, and he can't get it back. But he can pretty much just keep getting flares. Oh, and this is called the power of privilege.
I love it. Sounds very, very frightening.
And the last one, which in my opinion is the one I'm most excited about from what we've read, is the Explorer. Now, this one I like a lot because there's one that we already have in a set that you enjoyed, the World Eater, the
locusts, yeah.
That actually eat planets.
It was fun eating a planet.
Well, this guy's power is to find planets. He takes a player that isn't being used, their planets, takes 4 of their planets, and when he draws an encounter, he can say, "Oh, I found a planet near your system," and adds it to their planets, and then targets that one.
So they have no defense on it.
Yes. He gets more power the more planets he has discovered or has on his sheet too. And stuff.
It's limited to the 5?
4. He gets 4.
Right.
But I mean, he just finds new planets and stuff. It just sounds amazing. And these are just 5 of the ones people have suggested. Just imagine what the other 25 are.
I mean, the base game itself has so many crazy combinations.
How thick is your deck of different alien species?
Plus with one expansion, I mean, there's
like this.
Tons of combinations you can get. And with this, I mean, I think it's really cool that they went to fans for this. That I think it's a perfect idea for a game that's been out for a while that has this kind of variability to it. And it'd be great to see some other games take some cues from that.
Oh, no question, yeah.
But definitely excited for that. All right, other news. Talking about a whole new game, or actually a sort of a set of games was announced. If you're familiar with the comic book Chew, C-H-E-W, which is actually pretty cool. I have read some of it. It's about a guy whose sort of his superpower is that he can learn things about any object by tasting it. So if he bites into a piece of chicken, he gets a flash in his brain of where the chicken was born, how it was killed, etc., etc.
Now, does he have to actually bite it, or can he just lick it?
I think licking works as well.
Okay.
So it's a really interesting concept, has really good art. I recommend checking out. I am not up to date on it, but from what I've read, I really liked it. Anyway, IDW, who's done some other games, they're making the new X-Files game too. They announced that they're going to do a whole line of games based on this. They showed off the Chew card game logo, but there's also going to be a Chew dice game and perhaps others.
You actually chew the dice, right? You actually put them in your mouth and spit them out.
Now that sounds like a good idea. But I just think it's interesting to see a company taking a license like this and just going all in like that. Not just one game, but 2 or 3. And we're going to see a similar thing later when you talk about some Firefly stuff. And I don't know, I wonder if it might be too much, because Chew ain't Spider-Man. It's not I don't think it's a guaranteed hit necessarily, these games. So I wonder if it's maybe a little risky of them to be like, yeah, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing, I think it's overkill.
Well, maybe they'll just do a small print at first, see how it's handled.
True.
And you never know. Maybe there's more. There could be more fans out there than we know.
Yeah, probably true. But I just think it's oversaturating it a little bit. For me, I'd rather they put all their resources into one great product. This kind of almost feels more like a cash grab when they do stuff like that.
Well,
we'll just have to wait to see when the games come out and see how they play.
Well, for those who love Munchkin, we got some good news for you. There's a Kickstarter for Munchkin Bricks. Now, these are little weapons or other items for you to interact with Lego pieces. So when you play Munchkin, you can actually have a little Lego figure, and you can get, the kick-ass axe or the triple barrel shotgun, all these different weapons.
Those are the actual names of the weapons.
No, I don't think the axe is that. I think it's an actual axe. I mixed it up. You can also get the cursed duck.
The Duck of Doom.
Duck of Doom. And other items. So, I mean, if you're into that, we'll have a link down in our description, so you can take a look at that. It's only 30 days. I still think it's 30 days.
I'm pretty sure by the time you're watching this, they'll hit their goal.
Oh, yeah.
It was not a very high goal, and they were very close to reaching it when we last looked.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still plenty of time for people to back
Right,
it.
you have plenty of time to check it out. For me personally, I don't get it at all.
Look, everyone likes a little, it's...
It's just, there's 8 of these weapons, and you can use them with your Legos. I guess it's cool, but I don't know. I maybe it's more for younger kids. I just don't. I feel like it'd be different if it was like a whole Munchkin set, but it's just the items.
Who knows? Maybe they'll make this. Maybe they'll pick it up for actual Munchkin, and then they'll make one because they're already making thousands of other Munchkin games.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's hitting its goal, so I guess some people are into it. If you're not into that, though, here's some other stuff you might be into. If you're familiar with Tabletop Simulator, which is a game that came out on Steam not too long ago, earlier this year, I think, that's sort of this virtual digital arena where you can play chess, checkers, card games, what have you. But what's cool about it is that people can create their own games within it. So just recently they added Steam Workshop support. What that means is it's much easier for people through Steam to upload their own custom-made mods for the game. So in the near future, we're probably going to start seeing a lot more digital versions through the Tabletop Simulator of popular board games that we've played and better versions of them. I sort of wanted to bring this up also just because we haven't talked about it on the show at all. I was wondering if you've seen it and what you think about it, and if you think that's cool to. I think it's cool that you can. It's not. You don't get obviously a big part of board games is the physical space of it, but it is kind of neat to see them be able to recreate, and some of them very well, like Cosmic Encounter or something. Like how much you have to put into the different mechanics of each game and designing, putting the cards in, and how do you hold them, and designing the little ships of polygons and whatever you want. I don't know. I want to try it. I have not bought it yet.
I mean, I haven't either. And we'll see how much they can do with this new Steam support. And I'm also afraid if board game companies are gonna be like, no, you can't, because we want people to buy. For example, Catan actually has video game versions of their game.
Yeah.
And wouldn't be too hard to make, I feel.
I wonder about that. Well, I think because they're fan-made mods and not officially released through the game, they probably can get away with it. I mean, I'm assuming they have done their homework on this before releasing it, so they're probably okay. But yeah, it is an interesting thing. Like, why would you buy the Catan online game if you could buy this to get Catan plus 100 other things? But I'm sure during the Steam summer sale this year, I'll probably pick it up if it gets cheap.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else for us?
Oh, yeah. You mentioned earlier, the ACT Game Day happened. And they introduced a lot of cool stuff. We're going to just touch upon a few of them. But they introduced a new Firefight dice game, which is interesting, and as well as Firefight Clue and Yahtzee. Because
this is what I was talking about with Chew.
If there's a popular property, you might as well make a Monopoly, a Clue, and a Yahtzee version.
Why not? Isn't there some other Yahtzee too coming our way?
There's also a Walking Dead Yahtzee, once again falling under if it's a popular property. Hasbro needs to make a version of every single one of their games, which is why I cannot wait for a Firefly Candyland.
Oh man, Firefly Life, Firefly Scrabble,
Firefly Scrabble. You can only spell Firefly.
That's right.
But we also got a couple looks at 2 games that we're excited for: the Smash Up horror monster expansion and Legendary Villains. Now the Smash Up expansion show we saw 4 cards, which seems to imply that there's going to be a new putting +1 power counters on minions to give them temporary power, which sounds really awesome.
Which has not been in the game before.
No, it has not. So I'm excited for that, to see how that turns out. Also, I love the groups. We're getting mad scientists with like making Frankenstein, vampires, werewolves, and giant ants. Classic old horror movie.
Which I like, because I want them to go more. I think they need to go more broad. I wasn't a huge fan of the whole Cthulhu set. I want them to get out of the way these bigger groups that I think really fit, and I think they picked some great choices.
I think the problem we both have with the Cthulhu set is just that it was just Cthulhu.
Right.
Like, we didn't get 4 different things. Like, I mean, I like...
This is just monsters, but that seems... Monsters are such a broad category of things,
But
What else we got?
We also saw, not as much, but we saw some of the legendary cards. We saw a Spider-Man villain card, or adversary card, my mistake.
So these are they're heroes, but they're villains because it's the villain game.
We saw what do they call the masterminds in this set?
What do they call them? Commanders or something?
Yes, commanders of Doctor Strange. And we also saw a Venom card, which I'm believing is his big card for his set. And judging by the Venom card, which is the one we could really read fully, that this is going to be a lot more punching each other. Like, it's not just killing the villains. It's going to be, like, like if we were playing, I'm going to be like, weakness, discard your hand.
More competitive nature.
Which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Also because the Spider-Man card sounded fantastic, too. Apparently, he's going to reveal the adversaries just like his actual card in the regular Legendary set.
Right, he flips the top part of the deck and you get to keep it?
No, except the villain comes out if it's smaller. Right. I mean, a lot of great things. Also, Munchkin Panic, which is pretty much Castle Panic, but with Munchkin.
So, what is with this trend, it seems, of reskinning games with other... It just seems like such a cheap but easy way to, hey, you like this game? Well, let's slap this on top of it.
If it sells.
It's also kind of funny because Munchkin is like the thing that people put their properties onto. So now they're putting Munchkin onto another game, and Munchkin in itself is basically D&D, but funny. It's like the circle of life, But that's a summary of most of it, right? You can see all more of that on our site.
You'll see more on our news, so take a look. You can read the cards in particular that we mentioned. A lot of cool, new, interesting abilities. And if you love Yahtzee, I mean, good for you.
Good for you. But that will do it for our news segment this week. I think it's time to talk about our topic of the week.
So, our topic of this week is cooperative versus competitive.
Ooh, which, so in a way, competitive has already won. Because that's what it is. But what does that mean?
All right, so in a lot of games, they usually focus into 2 groups. Either you're all together to defeat some boss, or you're all out to kill each other. And there can only be one winner.
There can be only one.
There's many of these games. You're probably more used to competitive games. Because those are much more common because,
Especially like all your classic games.
Monopoly.
Clue, Life. Any of those games are almost... Really, cooperative gaming didn't, I don't think, become much of a thing until the last decade or so. At least not in a mainstream way, certainly.
Well,
Besides maybe Dungeons and Dragons, really is sort of the genesis in a way.
Yeah, because I think the big thing behind cooperative gaming is it's usually in a much more thematic game. Because for a cooperative game to be fun, that you actually want to do stuff, it has to be a story to it. Like, you're not just, you want to know what you're fighting.
Well, let's jump right into it first. So let's start with cooperative games.
Want to start with cooperative? Okay.
Why not? So what are the things that we enjoy about cooperative games when they're done well? For me, as you said, thematically.
Oh, no question. Yeah.
Usually, it takes place in an interesting story. And as we've stated on last week's episode, we talk about themes and mechanics. We like themes, so that's always a lot of fun to be with the group and feeling like you're working together on something. I like that. The other thing that I really like is it's just a little more. It's nicer. You know?
You're not losing friends usually.
It's nice to work together and actually get to cooperate.
However, it should be noted that you could still screw people over in cooperative games. As we did not know people would do this. In Arkham Horror, you go into other worlds and then you go out and close them. However, if people are still in that other world when you close the portal, they get lost in like time and space. Now, when we played Arkham, we never did that. If two people went in, we waited for the other person to come out. However, apparently, the creator of the game made a list of house rules. One of which was, if you close the portal on someone, you lose one sanity because the idea is you killed someone in a way. Because he apparently saw a mother do that to her daughter after her daughter begged her not to at a convention, which terrified us because we never thought of doing that.
That's how I'm raising my kids. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, kid. Messy. So yeah, if you're playing with jerks, I chose my words carefully there, then cooperative games may still not work out for you. But in essence, if everyone's working together, they should be nicer.
It should be known, though, that cooperative games have a huge pitfall. Now, competitive can have this too, in certain ones. We'll get to that when we go to competitive, but they can have it when one person pretty much is just really telling everyone what everyone else should do.
This referred to as alpha gamer.
And it's annoying not just for you, but I think in the alpha gamer as well. Because there'll be times when people are like, what did you do? And be like, well, I don't know. I mean, you have many choices. It's not too bad. But then it could also be annoying for maybe someone else. Like if someone else is competitive, it knows what to do. But like someone will be like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. It'll be a little annoying because then you're like, well, I'm not playing.
And I think a lot of times, sometimes this is at the fault of the players, but a lot of times it's at the fault of the game design a little bit too. Because I do think there are some cooperative games where there really is, it almost, a lot of them become sort of a puzzle. Like Pandemic is a great example of that, where it's sort of like you're working out the best way and how quickly you can do certain things. And sometimes there just isn't that much. It's like there really is a best way to do something. So there isn't always a room for someone's independent voice to say, I'm going to do this on my turn because, well, if you do that, we're going to lose.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to make sure that, like Pandemic, you said, is you can have one person take over the entire game, which is when it gets boring. But like some games, like
Pandemic does have a little bit. Try to put something in place to stop that.
This one is just sort of as bad, but it can be a little less. Arkham Horror. There'll be times when you really need one person to coordinate because one false move, you lose the game right there. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there are times when if you play right, like if you do one turn right, you'll all have some breathing room when you can be like, okay, what are you going to do? Well, I think I'm going to kill that monster. Okay. Or I'm going to go to the weapon shop.
Well, I think...
So that's the important thing. You got to make sure that at least if that happens, there's got to be breathing room times.
I think another great example is Robinson Crusoe.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a game where, because of the changing scenarios and because of sort of the randomness of some of the cards, I don't feel like there really is a one right solution. So I think there's a lot more leeway for people to, I feel like getting this item or whatever.
Well, I think they did the best of all. Like other games have gone close to it, but I feel like got the closest. The idea is, like, the alpha gamer could be like, okay, we need to gather wood for this mission. And that's on everyone's minds, but there's so much other things to do that it's not like he needs to direct everyone. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows the one quest in opinion.
Because everything is a good idea usually.
Yes.
It's more like, oh man, we can't do that and that, rather than we have to do this and this.
With, of course, like I said, when there's those small exceptions when like shit hits the fan and you have to do maybe one round perfectly.
And then there's, on the other extreme end of solving this problem, I'd say, is Hanabi. And that's the one method of fixing this is limiting the information usually that each player has. Mm-hmm. So Hanabi is like an extreme example where you only can see other people's cards in that game. You can't see your own, and you have to work together to give hints about what each person has in their hands, which is does exactly what it's supposed to do. I don't know how feasible that is for most games. It's very specific to that game design. But other games, like we were talking about Pandemic, they do say you're supposed to keep your power hidden or something. The idea is so that everyone has something to say. Oh, I can use this, so that one person can't just look around and figure it all out.
Well, I think another difference, because you bring up Hanabi, is well, at least what we try to do, is like when you have your hand, you have it facing out like this, so I see the back of my cards, I don't see the front. But even if I could be like, for example, I'm playing with maybe Jonathan and 2 other people, I could be like, I see 4s, they all have 4s, so therefore, and I've seen 4s played, I can't say, I know I have no 4s, because we don't want, that's sort of giving hints out.
If you've played Hanabi, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, you probably don't.
I mean, we're trying to be a little bit stricter sometimes. That's just us, but.
But it is an interesting, yeah. I think it's a tough balance to find where you don't, because sometimes it feels dumb to me. Where like in Battlestar or even in Pandemic, sometimes it's like you're not allowed to tell the other person what your hand is. But in the context of the story of the game, we're working together. Why wouldn't I just tell them I have this?
Well,
it makes no sense. It's purely for the game.
In Battlestar, the reason is so it's not, you can't root out the.
But you can still. I see what you're saying, but then it's say in Pandemic, still it's the same thing. You're not technically supposed to.
I want to put. I think we should. I want to put Battlestar and another game aside until after Cooperative, because
semi-cooperative.
Yes. But why don't we actually jump on to Cooperative?
You mean competitive?
Competitive. Wow.
Boom. Yeah, I don't know how, because competitive is the opposite, right? So how much is there really to say on?
Well, I mean, why don't we talk about?
What do you like about it?
I feel competitive.
I like going down my opponents and making them suffer.
Competitive, I feel, is going to be more mechanic heavy usually. Because it's going to be more of how can I interact, how can I do different things to interact, how can I screw over Jonathan. That's what I'll always be focusing on in a game. And I think there are a lot of great games to do well. Some games that are just boring.
Well, I think another thing that, both cooperative and competitive can have this issue again, but not having a lot to do on your turn. That's more dependent on the game. That's actually more of a cooperative problem.
An interesting thing though, doing things on other people's turns. Do you like it when they make it so you don't do anything until it's your turn? Or do you like it more if you can interrupt other people's turns?
It really depends on the game. Generally, I like it when everyone's involved each round. The less downtime there is, usually the better in any game as a rule. But it can be dependent on the game.
I usually find the less people are in the group, the more I want to be able to interrupt turns, because it's not as confusing. Because let's take a game like King of Tokyo where you can have a lot of people. I like the fact that I do my rolling, I'm done. I'm waiting just to see what else happens around the corner.
It's a little like of a relief. You don't have to worry about anything.
Right. And also it's less like I don't have to worry about 6 people interrupting my.
And then you got to look at your own hand like, oh, when can I play this? Should I play it now on their turn? Should I wait till their turn?
But like Magic the Gathering, where there is multiplayer, but in usual it's 1v1, or Android Netrunner, other games. It's good to be like, I know I can just focus on him. I know what he's gonna do, and I know when I can interrupt it.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense.
But another thing, competitive. I'm gonna keep mixing it up throughout the video. So we'll voice over some voiceover.
No one's gonna know. He liked cooperative, but he hated cooperative. He doesn't. But don't understand.
Competitive is sometimes there can come a point when everyone's fighting. Then it comes a point when just seeing luck. Like Monopoly, for example, you're doing buying and stuff, but then after everything's sort of bought, you're just waiting for everyone to go around, and if
I think you're saying well, maybe this isn't what you're saying, but related. A lot of times there's someone's in the lead, and it sort of feels like you're just kind of biding time till the game ends, and they get to the win.
Yeah.
Stuff like that can happen. Yeah.
And then another problem is if someone can snowball. I think a good example of this is Formula D. Because if someone gets a good head start and gets far, there's no way to stop them.
Racing game.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to hope that they mess up.
Yeah. Or if you're like me, you die in 2 turns. Or was it 3?
It was enough. So before we talk about semi-co-op, or should we talk about it first?
Well,
which I was going to say, do you actually have a preference, generally speaking? Do you tend to gravitate more towards the competitive or the cooperative?
For that, I don't have. I think it's more of a mood thing because there's so many games that are great on both sides. Like there will be times when I want to play Arkham. There's going to be times when I want to do something more competitive, like Formula D or something else. I think they're both very good play styles, and they're both tools in the Game Maker's kit that should not be ignored.
Yeah, I guess I feel like when I think of most of my favorite games, they tend to be cooperative. I don't know if that's just a coincidence, yeah, definitely. I definitely don't think one is better than the other. Obviously, there are, like you said, two different tools that should be used accordingly. But I often just like cooperative because you don't have to be good at the game. You don't have to feel bad when someone else messes you up. Or sometimes I feel bad if I win and I messed someone else up. I'm just saying, why can't we all just get along?
Since when have you had a conscience?
I grew one a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
I got this kit from the internet.
Nice.
Yeah, $49.99, and it does hurt. It does sting constantly. But I'm trying it out. I might get it removed. But you wanted to touch on semi-co-op.
Yeah, I think these I think actually are the ones that are some of the funner, because the two games in question, like you said, Battlestar, but I want to bring up Betrayal and House on the Hill. I think yes, that's right, it's right behind us, is a lot of fun because what happens is, like we both mentioned a lot, we love the trader mechanic, and these games do a great job on that. In which someone is good, but they could be bad or could become bad later. So you're working together, but then there's that sort of that in the back of your head, you're like, should I trust him? And it's just a lot of fun. And both of them do it with a great thematic background.
I'm totally with you. And I would say trader mechanic is almost a little different from true semi-co-op, which I would say as the
like more deck building games.
Sort of, but as the quintessential example, I would say Cutthroat Caverns.
Oh, right.
Where you have to work together or everyone loses, but ultimately one person wants to win, which is like Legendary also, deck building and some other ones. Which is much more, it's not as, there's no secrets like in a trader game, but it is fun to just know who's, that's a great atmosphere of we're working together, but at any moment, are going to screw you over a little bit. I agree. I feel like that is the best of both worlds. If I had to pick one type of game for the rest of my life, that might be it, maybe. No definitive statements on this show. But I think we all love all kinds of games all the time equally, because that's what we're all about here at Roll for Creative.
Love. It's like you don't want to always watch just one kind of movie. Sometimes you want to watch a comedy, sometimes you want an action adventure, sometimes you want to watch a Godzilla movie that actually features Godzilla.
Totally came out of nowhere. Pushing that to the side. Are there competitive role-playing games? Do you know if that is such a thing that exists?
I have to tell the truth, I don't know a lot about.
Yeah,
I have not even ever played a game of Dungeons and Dragons.
It's true.
I know, it's so hard.
No, that's going to be an episode someday.
No, we need to get on that.
And that will be fun. But definitely I like that feeling of camaraderie, but competitive has its place, of course. Because most games by default are that.
And, one of us has to be king.
That's true. One of us.
But what would you say your favorite cooperative and competitive games are?
Well, to beat a dead horse, it's going to be my favorite games. To go purely co-op, I really do love Robinson Crusoe. I think that is the perfect, it tackles it perfectly as a purely co-op game. Another good way to do it, I would say we didn't mention Ghost Stories, which their method is to make the game just so hard that everyone has to work together.
Well, I think Arkham falls into that often too. Not as bad as Ghost Stories. I feel like Ghost Stories I feel Arkham usually has a bit more breathing room.
A little bit. It's more because it's spread out, whereas Ghost Stories condenses all the pain into a sort of time. But I'm assuming Arkham for you.
Yeah, definitely Arkham. In terms of competitive.
I feel like that's every other game. But
No, but I mean, like I said, if like I love Magic Gathering for single player or like for two people. I mean, like when it's a small group. But for like a larger thing, I love King of Tokyo just because it's just okay. We're rolling the dice. You're done. Like you don't have to worry about your own little hand, like and doing a stack of like I play this. Well, then he plays this. Then he plays this. So what's the order we played in? But like I said, Betrayal on the House on the Hill is a great pickup because it gets both.
Both is always good. If you can choose one, it's always good to get both. Which is why there's both of us on this show.
Yes.
I think we're probably going a little long already, and we should. I think we pretty much said it all.
Yeah, I mean,
think we did.
Let us know your thoughts on this. If
Yeah.
you think one is better than the other, or if there's some huge flaw one has compared.
Yeah, that you one little thing that always bugs you in every cooperative game, maybe that you wish would go away. Please leave us a comment on YouTube or send us an email. Our email address is rollforcrit@gmail.com. You can also follow us on the Twitters.
At Roll4Crit.
That's right.
And our own Twitters. Mine's Doru Kiryu.
At Quens. At Ivan Arhan back there. Don't forget, please subscribe to us on YouTube and now on iTunes for the audio version, which is always available on our site as well.
And don't forget to like the video.
Like the video, like us on Facebook. Just like us, please.
We like friends.
We really could use a pick-me-up. That will do it. Don't forget to visit our website, rollforcrit.com, for all your gaming, shopping, playing needs. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and this is the Roll4Crit podcast.